Hi, I'm James Hamilton from Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal, and this is our monthly-ish, about every other month, Cool Tools video. These videos are all about tools that I use and I think you might enjoy having in your shop, sort of like show and tell for woodworkers. This time, we have sandpaper that might outlast your sander, a way to take accurate measurements in tight places, a game-changing new drill press, a compact saw that will cut almost anything, and will end rusty tools forever. As always, if a tool comes from a sponsor, we'll disclose that at the beginning of the video. Otherwise, I bought it myself. If you want to check out a tool more closely, please use the link in the notes below this video. Click on Show More if you're on YouTube. That'll help us out a little bit. Now let's get started. I've been using these Duragrit carbide sanding blocks for several years now, and I showed one in a video once and people went nuts. They wanted to know more about them, and really, I was surprised how few people had ever heard of sanding with carbide. I'm not talking about the silicon carbide that you find on some sandpaper. I'm talking about actual chunks of carbide attached to steel plates. These last many times longer than the sandpaper, and they're great for leveling, shaping, and fast sanding. They come in all different shapes and styles, but the ones I reach for the most are the sanding blocks. These are especially great for easing edges, creating chamfers. The side of the block is square to the sanding surface, so you can use them to shape edges without getting out of plumb, sort of like a hand plane in a shooting board. They're fast to grab for quick sanding tasks, there's no paper to change, and they're not going to tear on you like paper will. For power sanding, I have discs that go on my random orbital sander. These are steel plates too, with hook and loop backing, which is actually replaceable because the carbide lasts so long you're eventually just going to wear out your hook and loop. Some even claim that the carbide will outlast the sander itself. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I do know that one of these discs outlasts hundreds and hundreds of regular sanding discs, at least the ones I've used. But you got to keep them clean. Resin will build up and make them seem dull, just like your saw blade and your router bit. So every once in a while, I hit them with a rubber block or a brass wire brush. And I occasionally do a more thorough cleaning with the same stuff I use to clean my saw blades and router bits, this trend cleaner. You can even burn the resin away with a propane torch if you like to play with fire. They also make various files and plates for shaping and sanding in tight places. If I had to pick a downside though of the carbide sanding products from Duragrit, it's that you can't get anything finer than 150 grit. So these aren't going to take care of your fine sanding needs, but they'll do all of your shaping and leveling work and a lot of stuff sandpaper can't do. Seriously, I'll put a link in the notes below this video. Get just one. Try one of the sanding blocks, 80 grit if you're only going to get one. Put it on a shelf next to your bench and see how often you reach for it. You'll see what I mean. This is the Master Gauge Mini Magnetic Base, and it is deceptively simple. It holds a dial indicator on any ferrous metal surface, such as table saw, your jointer, bandsaw, lathe, drill press, you name it. Its rare earth magnetic base holds on tight. In fact, sometimes I use a couple of post-it notes to reduce the holding power so it's easier to remove. It's really well made and light on frills, it just tilts forward and back. That's about it. But the real value is in its size. You can put it just about anywhere, including inside machines to take precise measurements. You can even add a mini flashlight to use it to attach a light source in a tight space that you might be working, such as down inside your table saw, down in the motor of your car. It's one of those little things that you're going to find a million uses for. I'll put a link in the notes below this video so you can check it out for yourself. I think it's fair to say drill presses have been around for a while. I'm pretty sure Hannibal carried one across the Alps and it looked pretty much like the one in your shop because things have not changed much over the years. Until now. This is the Nova Voyager DVR drill press, and it is one of the coolest tools I have ever had in my shop. DVR stands for Digital Variable Reluctance. Simply put, the motor is completely different from what you're used to. There are no belts, no brushes, no windings. The stator is controlled by a computer, which monitors the speed and torque by firing magnetic fields inside. Variable reluctance motors have been in industry for a long time now, and they've proven to be more energy efficient, more reliable, and even have longer lifespans than traditional electric motors. And when you add digital controls, now they can do things that no other motor can. Nova's been putting them on their lathes for years, which proves that the electronics can hold up to the dustiest workshop conditions. But the most obvious benefit of applying this technology to a drill press is the variable speed feature. I can dial it all the way down to 50 RPM or all the way up to 3000 and anything in between with a simple turn of the knob, no belts to swap. This is important for woodworkers because clean and safe cuts depend on selecting the right speed for the bit and the material you're using. And let's face it, if you don't have to switch belts, you're far more likely to slow your drill press down and do things right. But what if you don't know what speed you need? Ask the drill press. I can tell it the type of bit I'm using, the size, and the material I'm working with, and it will set the optimal speed for me. While it's boring, the computer is monitoring that speed and compensating to maintain a consistent RPM under load. I can also tell it how deep I want it to bore, and when it reaches that point, it will shut off and apply a magnetic brake. If I'm boring multiple holes to the same depth, it will even turn the motor on and off as I begin and end each hole. If I do a lot of the same tasks using the same bits and materials, I can save those favorite speeds so that I can instantly recall them later. The motor will also run in reverse, which can be handy in certain situations, but one of the coolest uses of this feature is when you're tapping threads in metal. In fact, it will automatically advance and withdraw the tap in steps, clearing the shavings as it forms the threads. Another cool metalworking feature is the pilot assist. Instead of using a punch to create a pilot so my bit won't drift as I begin boring, the drill press will start slowly to establish a pilot on its own. When it senses the load increase as the bit takes hold, it speeds up to finish the hole. Of course, all these fancy features won't amount to much if the machine itself isn't accurate. So I did some checking. I pulled up my dial indicator and my mini magnetic base, and I measured for runout. Now, full disclosure, to do this, you really should have a piece of rod that is perfectly smooth, round, and straight. And all I had on hand was a set of machinist punches. And I figured that they're lathe turns, so they should be straight. But when I turned the chuck, I saw about 15 thousandths of runout, which is way more than it should be. And I wasn't sure if the error was in the machine or more likely in the punch, so I put the dial on the side of the chuck itself and limited the punch, and that dropped it down to only 3 thousandths of runout. So I think I was having some problems with my rod. That is much better. But I wanted to eliminate the chuck altogether and see what the actual machine does. So I took a reading right off the spindle. The slow speed feature, by the way, comes in really handy because I couldn't turn that little nub with my fingers as I measured it manually. Here, I got only about 1/1000th of an inch of runout, which is actually fantastic. I don't think you'd find a consumer level drill press that's better than that. So the machine itself is near perfect. And I think maybe the initial runout I saw was the pin itself. So I'm gonna try to track down a proper pin and retest it. And I mean, if it turns out to be a bad chuck, then I'll just tell Nova, and I know they got great customer service, they'll replace it for me. Anyway, this machine does have loads of capacity. The swing is 18 inches, lots of throat depth there. And I also have a full 6 inches of quill travel, which is more than I've had on a drill press before. There's a big cast iron table and a fence, which is great for woodworking. The motor is 1 3/4 horsepower, which is quite a bit more powerful than the other drill presses in its class. And did I mention it was DVR controlled? If you want to learn more about the Nova Voyager drill press, check out the link in the notes below. I saw the Trajan Q700 at a woodworking show a couple years ago, and I just had to get one. I don't do a lot of metal working in my shop, but I do cut aluminum and steel for certain jigs and projects. And I hate using a hacksaw, mostly because I'm lazy and I don't take the time to get nice straight cuts. I had a horizontal bandsaw, but it took up a lot of space for a tool I only use occasionally. This thing is light, portable, and powerful. And the key is the blade. It's a rugged carbide blade that's designed for cutting steel. Seriously, do not try this with your regular woodworking blades. You'll have teeth flying all over like a beer league hockey game. This saw cuts amazingly fast through angle iron and all the metals I use in my shop. And I've checked out some videos online, seen it cut through solid bar stock, so it's pretty powerful. But the best part in my mind is how compact it is. I pull it out for the occasional job and I throw it on a shelf where it's out of the way when I'm finished. It's the perfect metal cutting saw for a small shop like mine. I'll put a link below this video so you can check it out for yourself. In every edition of Cool Tools, I try to include one cheap tool that I wouldn't want to be without. This time, it's Zerust's Vapor Capsules. These little blocks emit a vapor that inhibits rust in enclosed spaces. I started using them a while back when I noticed some rust on my router bits. Problem solved. Now I have them in various drawers and cabinets all over the shop. Check them out at the link below. They come in different sizes, so choose one that fits the size of the drawer or the cabinet you're going to put it in. You'll thank me later. Well, that wraps things up for this edition of Cool Tools. Remember to use our links to check them out for yourself. That helps support us and all the free woodworking videos we produce. I cannot thank you enough for that. Wait, don't go yet. If you're new here, please subscribe and remember to ring the bell. I would really appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up, or better yet, leave us a comment. I always read them. And be sure to check out the latest issue of Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal. It's always packed with tips, tricks, and tutorials designed to make you a better woodworker.